Petty Officer Vanessa Rodriguez stood in the middle of the USS Nimitz flight deck, her hands trembling as she tried to remember the basic steps of aircraft chocking and chaining. The FA-18 Hornet loomed before her, its massive bulk seeming to mock her every move. Around her, other trainees moved with confidence, their hands steady and their movements precise. Which city are you watching from? Share it in the comments. Maybe someone else from your city is here too. And remember, if you believe heroes appear in the most unexpected ways, hit subscribe and give this video a like. Petty Officer Rodriguez called out Chief Petty Officer Thompson, his voice carrying across the flight deck. What's taking so long? This is basic aircraft handling. Vanessa's face flushed with embarrassment as she fumbled with the chaining equipment. Her mind was blank, her training seemingly evaporated. The other trainees were watching now, some with concern, others with barely concealed amusement. This was supposed to be her element, her specialty, but she was failing spectacularly. Chief, I'm having trouble with the procedures, Vanessa admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Chief Thompson walked over, his expression a mix of frustration and disappointment. Petty Officer, you've been here for 3 weeks, and you're still making rookie mistakes. How do you expect to handle aircraft on a carrier if you can't perform basic deck operations? The truth was, Vanessa Rodriguez was not who she appeared to be. Her service record showed a basic aviation maintenance background, a few years of shore duty, and a transfer to the USS Nimitz for advanced flight deck training. But that record was a carefully constructed fiction designed to hide a past that the Navy had decided was too politically sensitive to acknowledge. Vanessa Rodriguez was actually one of the most decorated naval aviators in recent military history. She had served multiple deployments aboard aircraft carriers, flying FA-18 Hornets in some of the most dangerous combat zones. She had flown over 200 combat missions, earning a Navy Cross, a Distinguished Flying Cross, and numerous other decorations. But her most significant achievement, the one that had forced her into hiding, was being the first female naval aviator to successfully lead a combat air patrol during a major engagement. The operation had taken place during her second deployment aboard the USS Enterprise. Her squadron had been called to provide air cover for a Marine amphibious landing that was under heavy enemy fire. The mission was supposed to be impossible. The enemy had established multiple surface-to-air missile sites, and the area was under constant surveillance. Vanessa had volunteered to lead the combat air patrol herself. She had spent hours planning the mission, studying the enemy positions, and coordinating with other aircraft and surface units. When the time came, she had led her flight of 4 FA-18s into the combat zone, engaging enemy air defenses and providing close air support for the Marines on the ground. The mission had been a complete success, but it had also exposed a problem that the Navy wasn't ready to face. Vanessa Rodriguez had proven that women could perform at the highest levels of naval aviation, even in the most dangerous combat situations. But instead of being celebrated for her achievements, she had been quietly reassigned, and her record had been sanitized. The official explanation was that her presence in combat zones had been a mistake, a bureaucratic error that had allowed a woman to serve in a role that was technically forbidden to her gender. The truth was more complicated. Vanessa Rodriguez had been too successful, too visible, and her continued presence in combat aviation had threatened the delicate political balance that kept women out of direct combat roles. So she had been sent to the USS Nimitz, given a new identity, and told to keep her mouth shut. She was supposed to be just another trainee, learning skills that she had already mastered years ago. But the training was designed for people who had never worked on a flight deck, and Vanessa found herself struggling to remember the artificial procedures that had been drilled into her during basic training. The real Vanessa Rodriguez would have known exactly what to do with that FA-18. She would have chalked and chained the aircraft with precision, moved on to the next task without hesitation. But the Vanessa Rodriguez who was supposed to be here, the one with the sanitized record, was supposed to be learning these skills for the first time. Petty Officer Rodriguez, Chief Thompson said again, his patience clearly wearing thin. I need you to demonstrate proper aircraft chaining technique. Right now. Vanessa took a deep breath and tried to focus. She had to remember what she was supposed to know, not what she actually knew. She had to be the person her record said she was, not the person she really was. Chief, I understand the theory, Vanessa said, trying to sound confident, but I'm having trouble with the practical application. Chief Thompson's expression softened slightly. I understand this can be overwhelming, Petty Officer, But you need to push through it. On a flight deck, you won't have time to think. You'll need to act on instinct. If only you knew, Vanessa thought. Her instincts were honed by years of real flight deck operations, but she couldn't use them here. She had to pretend to be learning skills that were second nature to her. The training continued throughout the day, with Vanessa struggling through each exercise. She was supposed to be learning how to direct aircraft movement, how to handle aircraft emergencies, how to coordinate with flight deck personnel. But every time she tried to perform these tasks, her real training took over, and she had to force herself to make the mistakes that a rookie would make. It was exhausting, both physically and mentally. Vanessa was constantly fighting against her own instincts, trying to remember to do things the wrong way. She had to remind herself to hesitate, to second-guess herself, to ask for help when she knew exactly what to do. By the end of the day, Vanessa was physically and emotionally drained. She had spent hours pretending to be incompetent at tasks that she had mastered years ago. She had watched other trainees struggle with procedures that she could perform in her sleep, and she had been unable to help them. As she walked back to her berthing compartment that evening, Vanessa couldn't help but wonder how long she could keep this up. How long could she pretend to be someone she wasn't? How long could she watch people struggle with problems that she could solve in seconds? The answer came the next morning, during a complex flight deck emergency exercise. The scenario involved a simulated aircraft crash on the flight deck, with multiple casualties and damaged aircraft that had to be cleared. Vanessa was assigned to coordinate the emergency response, and she was supposed to struggle with the basic procedures. But as she approached the simulated crash site, something in her snapped. She couldn't watch this emergency response fail when she knew exactly how to coordinate it. Her training took over, and she began directing the response with the skill and confidence of a seasoned flight deck officer. "Petty Officer Rodriguez," Chief Thompson called out, his voice sharp with surprise. "What are you doing?" Vanessa looked up, realizing that she had slipped into her real persona. She had been coordinating the emergency response with the precision and speed of someone who had done this hundreds of times in real operations. She had been moving with the confidence of someone who had led flight deck operations under combat conditions. I'm coordinating the response, Chief," Vanessa said, trying to sound uncertain. Chief Thompson walked over, his eyes narrowing as he watched Vanessa work. "You're moving too fast, Petty Officer. You're supposed to be learning these procedures, not performing them like a veteran." Vanessa forced herself to slow down, to make the mistakes that were expected of her. But it was too late. Chief Thompson had seen something in her movements, something that didn't match her supposed experience level. The next day, Vanessa was called into Chief Thompson's office. The older man was sitting behind his desk, a file open in front of him. Vanessa could see that it was her service record, but she knew it was the sanitized version. "Petty Officer Rodriguez," Chief Thompson said, his voice serious, "I've been reviewing your file, and I have some concerns." Vanessa's heart began to race. Had she been discovered? Had someone recognized her from her previous assignments? "Chief?" "Your movements yesterday, during the emergency exercise," Chief Thompson continued. "They were too precise, too confident. You moved like someone who had done this before many times." Vanessa tried to keep her expression neutral. "Chief, I've been studying the procedures very carefully. I want to be the best flight deck operator I can be." Chief Thompson nodded slowly. "I understand that, Petty Officer, but there's something else. Yesterday, when you were coordinating that emergency response, you used techniques that aren't taught in basic training. They're advanced procedures, ones that are only taught to experienced flight deck officers." Vanessa felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. She had used techniques that she had learned during her second deployment aboard the USS Enterprise, techniques that had saved the lives of multiple sailors when a real aircraft had crashed on the flight deck. She had used them without thinking, her training taking over completely. "Chief, I don't know what you're talking about," Vanessa said, trying to sound confused. "I was just following the procedures I learned in class." Chief Thompson leaned back in his chair, studying Vanessa carefully. "Petty Officer Rodriguez, I've been training flight deck personnel for 20 years. I know what a rookie looks like, and you don't look like a rookie. You move like someone who has been in combat, who has led flight deck operations under fire, who has made life-and-death decisions in real time." Vanessa's mind was racing. She had to think of something, some explanation that would satisfy Chief Thompson without revealing her true identity. "Chief, I have a photographic memory. I can remember procedures after seeing them once. Maybe that's why I seem more confident than I should be." Chief Thompson's expression didn't change. "A photographic memory might explain your knowledge of procedures, Petty Officer, but it doesn't explain your confidence under pressure, your ability to make split-second decisions, or your instinctive understanding of flight deck operations." Vanessa was running out of options. Chief Thompson was too experienced, too observant. She was going to figure out the truth sooner or later. The question was, what would happen when she did? "Petty Officer Rodriguez," Chief Thompson said, his voice becoming more serious, "I want you to know that whatever you're hiding, whatever the reason for this deception, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to train you, to make sure you're ready for whatever the Navy asks of you." Vanessa looked up, meeting Chief Thompson's eyes for the first time. The older man's expression was one of understanding, not accusation. He wasn't trying to expose Vanessa. He was trying to help her. "Chief, I can't tell you everything," Vanessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can tell you that I'm not who my record says I am." Chief Thompson nodded slowly. "I suspected as much, Petty Officer. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" What happened next would change everything. Chief Thompson would discover Vanessa's true identity, and the Navy would be forced to confront the reality that they had been hiding one of their most capable naval aviators. Vanessa Rodriguez would finally be recognized for her achievements, and the Navy would begin the long process of integrating women into combat aviation. But that was still in the future. For now, Vanessa Rodriguez was just another struggling trainee, trying to learn skills that she had already mastered, trying to be someone she wasn't. The truth was out there, waiting to be discovered, and when it was, nothing would ever be the same again. The following week brought even more challenges for Vanessa. The training exercises became more complex, involving multiple aircraft movements, different types of emergencies, and scenarios that tested not just flight deck knowledge, but also leadership and decision-making skills. Vanessa found herself constantly walking a tightrope between showing enough competence to pass the course and revealing too much of her real experience. During a particularly challenging exercise involving a simulated flight deck fire with multiple aircraft involved, Vanessa was assigned to lead a team of 3 other trainees. The scenario required them to coordinate the movement of aircraft away from the fire, establish firefighting operations, and coordinate with damage control teams. It was exactly the kind of operation Vanessa had led dozens of times in real combat situations, but she had to pretend to be learning it for the first time. "Petty Officer Rodriguez, you're in charge of this team," Chief Thompson announced. "You have 15 minutes to clear the flight deck and establish firefighting operations. Go." Vanessa immediately fell into her old role, barking out orders with the authority of someone who had commanded in combat. "Johnson, coordinate aircraft movement to the forward deck. Williams, establish firefighting teams at the crash site. Davis, coordinate with damage control for water and foam." Her teammates moved with purpose, following her instructions without question. Vanessa coordinated the operation with the efficiency of a veteran, and she could see Chief Thompson watching her with increasing interest. "Time's up," Chief Thompson called out. "Petty Officer Rodriguez, report your findings." Vanessa stood at attention and began her report. "Chief, we successfully cleared all aircraft from the fire zone, established 3 firefighting teams, and coordinated with damage control for water and foam support. The flight deck is secure and ready for emergency aircraft recovery." The other trainees looked at her with amazement. She had used terminology and procedures that they hadn't learned yet, and she had organized the operation with a level of professionalism that seemed impossible for someone with her supposed experience. Chief Thompson's expression was unreadable. "Petty Officer Rodriguez, where did you learn to coordinate flight deck operations like that?" Vanessa felt her heart pounding in her chest. She had slipped up again, revealing knowledge that she wasn't supposed to have. "Chief, I read about it in the training manual. I've been studying very hard." "Really?" Chief Thompson said, his voice skeptical. "Because that manual doesn't cover half of what you just demonstrated. You moved like someone who has done this before, Petty Officer. Multiple times." The other trainees were watching the exchange with growing interest. They had all noticed that Vanessa seemed to know things that weren't taught in class, and they were beginning to wonder about her background. "Chief, I can explain," Vanessa began, but Chief Thompson held up his hand. "Not here, Petty Officer. My office. Now." As Vanessa followed Chief Thompson to his office, she could feel the eyes of her fellow trainees on her back. They knew something was up, and they were going to want answers. But Vanessa had bigger problems to worry about. Chief Thompson closed the door behind them and sat down at his desk. Petty Officer Rodriguez, I've been patient with you. I've given you the benefit of the doubt, hoping that you would come clean on your own. But this has gone on long enough. Vanessa stood at attention, her heart racing. Chief, I don't know what you mean. Don't play games with me, Petty Officer, Chief Thompson said, his voice sharp. I've been training flight deck personnel for 20 years. I know what a rookie looks like, and you are not a rookie. You move like someone who has been in combat, who has led flight deck operations under fire, who has made life-and-death decisions in real time. Vanessa felt her carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. Chief Thompson was too experienced, too observant. He had seen through the deception from the beginning, and he was not going to let it continue. Chief, I can explain, Vanessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then explain, Chief Thompson said, because right now you're looking at a possible captain's mast for falsifying official documents, and that's if you're lucky. If this goes higher up the chain of command, you could be looking at a court-martial. Vanessa felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. She had known that this was a possibility, but she had hoped that it wouldn't come to this. She had hoped that she could complete her training and return to active duty without anyone discovering the truth. Chief, I'm not who my record says I am, Vanessa admitted. But I can't tell you everything. Not here, not now. Chief Thompson leaned back in his chair, studying Vanessa carefully. Petty Officer Rodriguez, I want you to understand something. I'm not here to destroy your career. I'm here to train you, to make sure you're ready for whatever the Navy asks of you. But I can't do that if I don't know who you really are. Vanessa looked up, meeting Chief Thompson's eyes. The older man's expression was one of concern, not anger. He wasn't trying to expose Vanessa. He was trying to help her. Chief, I have a classified service record, Vanessa said, choosing her words carefully. I can't discuss the details, but I can tell you that I'm not a rookie. I have combat experience, and I have the training and skills to prove it. Chief Thompson nodded slowly. I suspected as much, Petty Officer. The question is, what are we going to do about it? What happened next would change everything. Chief Thompson would help Vanessa navigate the bureaucratic maze that had hidden her true identity, and together they would force the Navy to confront the reality that they had been hiding one of their most capable naval aviators. Vanessa Rodriguez would finally be recognized for her achievements, and the Navy would begin the long process of integrating women into combat aviation. But that was still in the future. For now, Vanessa Rodriguez was standing in Chief Thompson's office, her carefully constructed world beginning to unravel around her. The truth was out there, waiting to be discovered, and when it was, nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and bureaucratic red tape. Chief Thompson had taken Vanessa's case to his superiors, and the Navy's internal investigation machine had begun to turn. Vanessa found herself sitting in conference rooms with officers whose rank and authority far exceeded her own, explaining over and over again why she had been forced to hide her true identity. The investigation revealed the full extent of the deception. Vanessa Rodriguez's real service record showed multiple combat deployments aboard aircraft carriers, leadership of combat air patrols, and decorations that included a Navy Cross, a Distinguished Flying Cross, and numerous other classified commendations. But more importantly, it showed that she had been one of the most effective naval aviators in the entire fleet. The Navy's response was swift and decisive. Vanessa Rodriguez was immediately promoted to Chief Petty Officer and reassigned to a position that matched her actual experience and capabilities. She was given command of an advanced flight deck training team where she could use her real knowledge to train the next generation of flight deck personnel. But the real impact of Vanessa Rodriguez's story went far beyond her personal career. Her case had exposed a fundamental flaw in the Navy's policy regarding women in combat aviation. The Navy had been hiding some of its most capable sailors simply because of their gender, and Vanessa Rodriguez's story had forced them to confront that reality. Within months of her case being resolved, the Navy began the process of officially integrating women into combat aviation. The policy change was announced with great fanfare, and Vanessa Rodriguez was invited to the Pentagon to witness the signing of the new regulations. As she stood in the Pentagon that day, watching the Secretary of Defense sign the documents that would change the Navy forever, Vanessa Rodriguez couldn't help but think about all the other women who had been forced to hide their achievements, all the other sailors whose contributions had gone unrecognized because of outdated policies and political considerations. Her story had been about more than just one sailor's struggle for recognition. It had been about the fundamental right of every sailor to be judged by their abilities and achievements, not by their gender. It had been about the Navy's responsibility to recognize and utilize the talents of all its sailors, regardless of who they were or where they came from. Vanessa Rodriguez's journey from struggling trainee to recognized naval aviation veteran had been long and difficult, but it had also been necessary. Sometimes the truth had to be forced into the light, even when it was uncomfortable or inconvenient. Sometimes the system had to be challenged, even when it seemed too powerful to change. The Navy was better for having been forced to confront the reality of Vanessa Rodriguez's service, and Vanessa Rodriguez was better for having been forced to fight for the recognition she deserved. The truth had set her free, and in doing so, it had set the Navy free as well. As Vanessa Rodriguez walked out of the Pentagon that day, she knew that her story was far from over. There would be other women following in her footsteps, other sailors whose achievements would finally be recognized. The Navy was changing, and Vanessa Rodriguez had been one of the catalysts for that change. But for now, she was content to return to her new assignment, to use her hard-won knowledge and experience to train the next generation of flight deck personnel. She had proven that women could serve at the highest levels of naval aviation, and now she had the opportunity to ensure that other women would never have to hide their achievements again. The truth had been worth fighting for, and Vanessa Rodriguez had won her fight. The Navy had been forced to acknowledge her service, and in doing so, it had been forced to acknowledge the service of all women who had been willing to put their lives on the line for their country. Vanessa Rodriguez's story was a testament to the power of perseverance, to the importance of standing up for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. It was a story that would inspire other women to follow in her footsteps, to demand the recognition they deserved for their service and sacrifice. The Navy would never be the same again, and that was exactly as it should be.